On paper, the American BAR was just a rifle. To Japanese soldiers in the Pacific, it felt like something far worse. When the BAR opened up, the jungle seemed to tear apart. Trees splintered, dirt jumped, men froze. Japanese troops were trained to fight fast, move quietly, and close the distance. The BAR destroyed that plan. It fired harder and longer than most weapons they faced, turning ambushes into chaos. But what exactly led the Japanese forces to shiver at the mention of the American BAR? Let's find out. To understand why the Browning automatic rifle mattered so much, you have to go back before John Browning himself. For decades, armies relied on heavy machine guns that ruled the battlefield but could barely move with it. Early weapons like the Gatling gun and later Maxim machine guns were powerful, but they were fixed in place, crew-served, and slow to shift once fighting began. World War I proved how deadly they were, but it also showed a problem. Infantry needed firepower that could move forward with them, not sit behind sandbags. That gap is what John M. Browning set out to fix in 1917. His answer was the Browning automatic rifle, a weapon designed to walk with soldiers, not anchor them. Unlike water-cooled machine guns, the BAR was gas-operated, lighter, and could be fired by one man. It weighed under 20 pounds when first designed and fired the same .30-06 round used by American rifles. This meant shared ammo and real battlefield flexibility. The BAR was built to fire from a 20-round magazine and could switch between semi-automatic and full automatic fire in early versions. It fired at roughly 550 rounds per minute and could hit targets hundreds of yards away. More importantly, it could be stripped and cleaned in the field without tools. Dirt, sand, and jungle grime rarely stopped it. This reliability would later matter deeply in places like Normandy and the Pacific. One of the clearest examples of the BAR's value came on D-Day at Pointe du Hoc. US Army Rangers climbed sheer cliffs under fire, carrying little more than mortars and BARs. When Sergeant William Petty stumbled into two German soldiers at close range, he fired his BAR instinctively as he fell. The bullets missed, but the sound and violence of the weapon shocked the Germans into surrender. Moments like that were common. The BAR did not just kill, it dominated space and broke enemy confidence. By World War II, the BAR had evolved into the M1918A2. This version focused fully on automatic fire with slow and fast rate settings. It added a buffer system to reduce recoil, a bipod for defensive fire, and a flash suppressor to protect the shooter's night vision. It could fire standard ball, tracer, armor-piercing, and even incendiary rounds. This made it effective against infantry, light vehicles, and fortified positions. Tactically, the BAR became the backbone of the American Rifle Squad. By 1941, US squads were built around it. The gunner provided constant suppressing fire while riflemen moved. Even though the barrel could overheat and accuracy dropped with long bursts, short controlled fire made it deadly. Marines valued it so much that they modified theirs to regain semi-automatic fire for better control. The BAR was not perfect, but it changed how infantry fought. It gave soldiers confidence, firepower, and momentum. It was not just a weapon, it was the sound of American squads pushing forward, and that sound terrified the Japanese forces. On the night of August 21st, 1942, Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki marched 800 of Japan's best infantry toward what he believed was a weak American perimeter on Guadalcanal. His men were veterans of China and Manchuria, trained for night attacks, close combat, and shock assaults. They had won before by moving fast, staying tight, and breaking enemy morale with concentrated force. Ichiki expected scattered rifle fire, confusion, and collapse. Instead, he walked into something entirely new. As Japanese troops crossed the narrow sandbar at Alligator Creek, Marine flares lit the beach, revealing dense, disciplined formations advancing almost shoulder to shoulder. It was exactly how Japanese infantry had been trained to fight, and it was exactly why they died in such numbers. Along the Marine line, Browning automatic rifles were spaced deliberately, one per squad, each covering a sector of fire. When the first BARs opened up, the effect was immediate and devastating. This was not the slow, isolated rifle fire Japanese troops were used to absorbing. It was sustained, overlapping automatic fire delivered by weapons that could move, shift targets, and keep firing even as the squad repositioned. Japanese doctrine relied heavily on a small number of light machine guns, such as the Type 99. These weapons were powerful but crew-served, static, and limited in number. Suppress the gun, and the position collapsed. The BAR changed that equation entirely. There was no single gun to silence. Firepower was spread across the line. When one position was hit, others kept firing. As wave after wave advanced, Japanese formations became liabilities. The tighter the unit, the more effective the BAR fire became. Marines weren't just stopping attacks, they were breaking the logic behind them. By dawn, nearly an entire regiment had been wiped out. Fewer than 40 Marines were killed. And while on the surface, it may have looked like an ordinary defeat, it was a breaking point for Japanese forces. A reminder to wake up and see just how heavily the scales were tipped against them. The Japanese were not outnumbered in manpower that night. They were outnumbered in firepower per man. American industry had done something Japan could not. It had placed automatic weapons at the squad level, not the platoon or company level. Every Marine unit carried its own mobile base of fire. Japanese infantry faced not one machine gun, but dozens of automatic rifles operating independently and in coordination. This imbalance only widened as the war went on. The United States produced more than 300,000 bars during the conflict. Japan struggled to equip even elite units with enough light machine guns and ammunition. Japanese tactics depended on courage, discipline, and coordinated movement. The BAR punished all three. It did not care about morale, tradition, or battlefield honor. It rewarded dispersion, fire discipline, and sustained suppression. Survivors later described the experience with shock and disbelief. They had trained to charge riflemen, not to advance under continuous automatic fire from unseen positions. Their training, as one soldier admitted, meant nothing. After Guadalcanal, Japanese commanders began to understand the problem, but by then it was too late to fix. They could not match American production, nor could they quickly redesign their infantry doctrine. Instead, they adapted defensively. Bunkers, caves, tunnels, and fortress warfare in places like Iwo Jima and Okinawa. These were not signs of strength. They were admissions of inferiority in open combat. Hell's Point showed the truth early. The BAR did not win because it was perfect. It won because it turned American squads into self-contained fire units. Japanese soldiers were not defeated by fear or lack of skill. They were defeated by a system that gave every enemy unit the firepower of a machine gun team. By late 1943, the Pacific War had ceased to be a contest of tactics and had become a test of systems. Battles like Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa showed the same pattern again and again. Japanese defences were well prepared, deeply dug in, and manned by soldiers willing to die in place, but they were being dismantled methodically by American infantry firepower. Not by numbers of men, but by numbers of bullets. At Tarawa, Saipan, and later Iwo Jima, American units advanced behind continuous automatic fire delivered at the squad level. Japanese positions that were designed to stop frontal assaults were instead neutralised by mobile firepower that could move, suppress, and kill without pause. This was not accidental. It came directly from American doctrine. American doctrine was built around industrial thinking. Firepower mattered more than individual bravery. Every Marine squad carried automatic weapons that could be used instantly, without waiting for a separate machine gun crew. By 1943, Marine squads often had 1 or 2 bars, and unofficially even more. The belief was simple. Survival depended on overwhelming the enemy with controlled, repeatable fire. Japanese doctrine came from a very different belief system. The 1909 Infantry Manual, still in use during the war, devoted far more attention to spiritual power and bayonet fighting than to automatic weapons. Courage, discipline, and willingness to die were expected to overcome material disadvantages. As a result, Japanese weapons reflected this thinking. The Type 96 and Type 99 light machine guns existed, but they were treated as special support weapons. A company might have 2 or 3. They required crews, careful handling, and steady conditions. The industrial gap made this worse. The United States produced roughly 350,000 BARS during the war. Japan produced around 94,000 Type 96 and Type 99 light machine guns in total. American factories turned out weapons using standardized parts and assembly lines. Japanese production relied on hand-fitted components and skilled labor that could not scale. Ammunition told the same story. American squads carried thousands of rounds. Japanese soldiers often entered battle with around 100 rounds per man. The result was brutal but predictable. American doctrine produced weapons that favored movement, suppression, and sustained fire. Japanese doctrine produced weapons meant to support soldiers whose primary role was still close combat. When those two systems met, doctrine, not courage, decided the outcome. Japan did try to adapt. After Guadalcanal and Tarawa, Japanese commanders understood that frontal assaults were suicidal. By late 1943, they shifted toward defense in depth, underground cave systems, and carefully prepared kill zones. Battles like Saipan and Iwo Jima show real learning. General Kuribayashi's tunnel network on Iwo Jima was sophisticated, disciplined, and designed to bleed American forces over time. But tactical adaptation could not overcome structural limits. Japanese planners recognized the firepower gap, but they could not close it. They lacked the industrial base to mass-produce automatic weapons or ammunition at American levels. Even when foreign options were explored, such as investigating licensed production or purchase of BARs through neutral Sweden, Japan lacked the shipping capacity, foreign currency, and factory throughput to make it viable. There were also institutional limits. Automatic weapons were still viewed as specialist tools, not the backbone of infantry squads. No doctrinal shift equivalent to American BAR-centered squads ever occurred. Orders emphasized endurance and sacrifice, not restructuring units around firepower. Even when captured, American documents showed the importance of automatic rifles. Japan could not replicate the logistics that made them effective. Training was another barrier. American BAR gunners fired thousands of rounds in training and learned techniques like walking fire, alternating guns, and rapid magazine changes. Japanese soldiers often entered combat having fired fewer than 100 rounds total in training. Ammunition shortages made realistic training impossible. You cannot adapt to automatic warfare without ammunition to practice it. Manufacturing quality also worked against adaptation. Japanese light machine guns suffered from inconsistent metallurgy, spring failures, and feed issues. These were not design flaws alone, but production flaws caused by craft-based manufacturing, under bombing and material shortages. American weapons improved as the war went on. Japanese weapons degraded. In Okinawa, Japanese officers openly acknowledged the reality. Colonel Yahara and other survivors wrote that American victory came not from tactics alone, but from material superiority that could not be matched. Japan was no longer losing battles. It was losing a production race it had never been equipped to run. In the end, Japan failed to adapt not because it refused to learn, but because learning without industry, logistics, and ammunition leads nowhere. The problem was never cover. It was capacity. In the end, the story isn't about one weapon being better than another. It's about systems, industry, and the kind of wars nations are actually built to fight. The BAR didn't just fire bullets. It represented a way of thinking that Japan couldn't match in time, scale, or supply. And once that gap opened, no amount of bravery could close it. If you enjoy breakdowns that go beyond myths and actually explain why wars unfold the way they do, make sure you subscribe to the channel. There is much more to come.